But welcome and good morning. This is for the Planning Committee. Councillor Keith Driver, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. There's a few matters that housekeeping I need to go through first. Put my white glasses on. Action in the event of an emergency, there are no practice alarms planned for this meeting, so if an alarm sound, please evacuate the City Hall by going down the main staircase and out to the War Memorial in front of the City Hall. This meeting is also being live streamed to the Council YouTube pages and will be available after the meeting. Please, would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute their microphones when not speaking. We'll go through introductions now for the members of the committee and officers, and we'll start with on my left.
I'm Councillor Mike Sounds.
Councillor Emma Hampton. Councillor Carly Harper.
Hi, Councillor Ash Haynes.
Councillor Jenny Knight.
Councillor Richard Laws.
Councillor Judith Lubbock.
Councillor Chris Smith.
Councillor Julie Young.
And officers coming down.
Good morning. I'm David Parkin. I'm the Development Manager.
Hi, I'm Lara Emerson. I'm the Development Management Team Leader.
Hi, I'm James Kelly. I'm the Planning Officer.
Leonie Bowett, Senior Committee Officer.
Thank you. Members of the committee may use electrical devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras. But please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not voice or camera flash functions. We will have a short break at 12 o'clock and between 1 and 2 if there's any business left to be resolved. If we go on to the main business of the meeting, and we'll start with apologies for absence.
Received apologies from Councillors Fox and Kane, and Councillor Young is acting as Councillor Fox's substitute.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, anyone? Councillor Lubbock.
Thank you, Chair. I declare predetermination for items 4.2 and 4.4, and I will speak on item 4.4.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? No. Move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of August and the 11th of September and the 25th of September. Do we agree they're correct record?
Yep.
Thank you very much. As chair, I've decided to change the order of consideration based on members of the public here today, and we hear the arguments in the following order. The first one now is Unfang Road 437, then Denmere Close, Claymore Mount, Colgate, Drayton Road, and then Orwell Road. So if we move on to the first one, which is 437 Unfang Road, and I'll ask James Keatley to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is number 25/00832/F. 437 Unthank Road, located in Eaton Ward, and is in Unthank and Christchurch Conservation Area. The proposal is a single-storey extension to the garage, replacement conservatory in a starboard orangery, first floor gable extension, and a new garden room to rear. This is a location plan outlined in red. The property is a large detached property with 435 to the east and 439 to the west. These are the existing elevations for the rear and southwest. This is a photo from the rear of the property. This is where the new garden room will be put in. This is where the new two-storey extension will happen. This is a new first floor, the new orangery style room extension here, and this is a new extension by the garage here. These are the proposed elevations for rear and southwest facing. The two-storey extension located here will continue the pitch roof. The windows on the second storey here will be conditioned to be obscure glazing in order to mitigate overlooking. The new orangery style room will have 2 skylights. The garage extension here will continue the pitch roof. It will leave an open space next to the boundary, as seen here. The design uses existing materials, red brick and white render for walls, red tiles for the roof, mix of white timber and UPVC frames for doors and windows, and it overall retains the character of the area. These are the proposed plans for the application. The first floor plans show the rooms incorporating the extension. For the two-storey, there's a utility and pantry on the ground floor and a new bathroom on the first floor. We have the orangery room here. The garage extension will have a home office and bathroom. And there are also internal works happening on the other side of the property with the creation of a new bathroom. This also shows the 1.7 metre gap between the garage extension and the boundary, which will reduce the feeling of the extension being imposing to the neighbour. Neighbour objections mainly concern the garage extension next to the boundary. Photo 1A is taken from the rear of 437, and 1B shows the garage next to the boundary. The pitch roof will continue 2.7 metres along the boundary into the garden. 2A is inside the property at 439, which shows the courtyard area, sorry, next to the boundary. And 2B shows the relationship between the roof and this courtyard area. And then 2C shows the extra window in the room that looks out into the garden. (3A) shows the size of the properties and shows how the extension is modest relative to the size of the plots. 3B shows the area impacted is minimal to the rest of the plot. So that's the area impacted there. And it also shows that number 435 to the east will be unaffected. If I could just go back quickly. I just wanted to confirm the rooms that will be affected at 439. The room is a family room leading into a kitchen. So that will be the room affected there. In conclusion, I'd like to recommend to the committee that you approve application 250083T/F, including the conditions and informatives mentioned in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Julian start speaking on this, is it? No. Okay, we've got a couple of speakers on this one. The first one is Chris McEvoy. Sorry about that. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, fine, mate. There's a button put on here and you're allowed 3 minutes.
Anyway, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to put forward our objections to the certain aspects. Devoid of any natural light, and the use of the pitch roof in part of it is entirely unnecessary. We put forward a possible solution in our letter of objection, but this was not based on the record for reasons of privacy. So we have provided Mr. Ketley with a brief summary which has been uploaded onto the website. Our home was built very close to the boundary on the north side of the plot, and number 437 has grown towards it over the years, including a garage built up to the boundary itself. The proposal increases that encroachment, and the mass and bulk of the structure which overshadows our windows and amenity area outside. The letter we submitted showed this with a number of photographs, which some have been put on. I would ask you to imagine, however, how you would feel if presented with this design if it was your own house in similar circumstances. The planning application states there would be no loss of hedge, but this is not actually the case. A length of the hedge obstructs the proposed construction and would need to be removed, and also to allow for associated rainwater drainage, which will be required. The drawings themselves do not show any boundary treatment, such as fencing at the canopy area, and the proposed first floor plan only shows the garage roof on the plans and not the new work as it should. Indeed, I feel it does not, there's insufficient information shown on the plans that our concerns can be properly identified from their application drawings. The overshadowing and loss of light could easily be addressed without any change to the internal configuration or layout by simply taking away the pitched roof and continuing the flat roof along to cover the area of accommodation. This would unify the single-storey extension into one structure, save the length of hedge, and have an acceptable degree of loss of amenity and overshadowing to our property. I hope the committee will agree that the submitting drawings do not provide sufficient information about the containment of the covered area next to the boundary, and we ask if you would kindly consider asking for appropriate amendments to the plans. My wife and I would be very happy to support a scheme that replaced the steeply pitched roof with a flat roof. Thank you, and apologies for the voice. Thank you
very much. We've got the applicant or someone to speak in favour of the applicant, Kristen Malloy. I'm very good at names, by the way. And you have up to 6 minutes, 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm the agent and architect for the scheme for the clients, Mr. and Mrs. Lyons. Just to say, the application is fundamentally alterations to the existing dwelling to continue to provide a family dwelling. The sort of generous sort of sizes and scales of these properties in this picturesque part of Norwich, especially on this section of Unthank Road, has been proportionate to the kind of scale and footprint of the building. However, the extensions are relatively small. We recently, we understand there's objections. We only recently sort of saw these come through. Firstly, hopefully that the drawings are accurate, obviously to meet sort of through the validation qualification. But the image on there, conveniently, number 3A, is probably the one that gives the best example. That image shows it as a sort of a clean, straight, horizontal image, which you would expect. In reality, the orientation of that is northeast. As you can see in that image, that would be taken in an afternoon stroke evening kind of period. So the sun actually sets on the east, rises in the east, moves through to the south, sets on the west. So any shadow cast is actually cast by the adjacent property. 437 can't cast a shadow over to that property because of the proximity of the roof in the middle central part of the building. The single-storey garage, which was sort of questioned next to the adjacent boundary, is an existing building, and we're looking to continue that roof. Furthermore, through discussions with the planning officer, we decided to retreat that corner of the proposal. So effectively there's an overhang. So only the roof would provide some sort of shelter overhang. The angle of the pitch roof will also disperse any kind of overshadowing. There's no overlooking, and then there's no privacy lost as a result. Also the mention of the hedge being lost for that reason, because we're not building to the full length of the extension. That corner is effectively cut away with an open area supported by a corner post. The hedge will stay intact, the fence will stay intact, the hedge of which is obviously on our client's side, but regardless, there's no intention to remove that. In terms of the sort of scheme in general, it does provide a small, it's called garden room, but essentially it's a sort of bay window area to the kitchen to allow kind of more natural light within and also views to the garden areas. The office area within the garage is a sort of contained area to not disturb anyone in the main dwelling. And the orangery is a replacement of the existing conservatory with something a bit more traditional and a bit more sympathetic to the building. None of the proposals can be seen from the front elevation or principal elevation street view. And also from the side elevation, you would not be able to sort of see the extensions because of the sort of shielding, if you like, of the garage. Therefore, we sort of carefully considered the approach to make sure there are no impacts either with overlooking, overshadowing, or an overbearingness because it's contained within the profile of the existing building. I suppose, therefore, it's basically to conclude, whilst it's been carefully considered, we understand any sort of changes obviously have some sort of degree of scrutiny, but we've been very careful to make sure that not just we meet the client's brief, but also we respect the neighbouring sort of context and the buildings around it. Obviously, many buildings on there of even greater scale, but regardless, we've kept within our kind of confines for what we needed to achieve.
I'm afraid your 3 minutes is up, I'm
Okay.
afraid.
Oh, I thought you said 6, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Sorry? Oh, James, did you want to come back for anything what's been said up today? No, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to members' questions to the planning officer. Any questions? Richard?
Yeah, sorry, on questions on what we've heard so far, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to establish, firstly, this what I heard was about overhanging. Is any part of the either existing building or proposed new building going to overhang, even if it's just guttering?
No.
Okay, anyone else got any questions to the planning officer? Now we'll catch up. Yes, Young.
Sorry, yeah. Dear, I feel a bit echoey. Right, just to confirm that, because obviously we heard that there was going to be interference to a hedge and that there would be overhanging on the boundary. In the notes I can see it, or the report, it does say that it will sit 1.7 meters away. So that includes any guttering, any overhanging. Can I just have that clarified, and also have it clarified that there will be no impact on the current hedge?
In regards to the hedge, I contacted the agent and it was confirmed that no hedges or trees will be removed as part of the proposal. In regards to the 1.7 meters, that's where the new wall of the extension there, that leaves a 1.7 meter gap between there and the boundary, but the roof will slope towards the neighbour's boundary. So that goes right to the fence, but the actual building stays 1.7 meters away.
Sorry, just to have that clarified, it goes right to the boundary, but it doesn't overhang the boundary.
The roof, yes, yeah.
Just to pick up on that, the plan that's on the screen at the moment, the dark area that's on the left-hand side, that's the overhang that we're talking about. So it's an overhanging part of the roof, all of which is actually on the applicant side. You can see that it's actually in line with the existing eaves level of the garage on the bottom drawing. So the eaves line continues along, and there's no overhanging as a result of the proposal.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to proposals from the committee. Anyone wish to speak one way or the other? The answer is no. I'll move the recommendation, and the recommendation is to approve. And we will take a vote on this, but I need a second and a first. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can someone ask Councillor Lovett to come back in, please? Thank you, James. Thank you very much for that. We now move on to Denman Close, and I'll ask our planning officer to take us through. Lara, will you take us through?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so members may remember that this application was brought before committee in September, but that item was deferred to allow further time to consider two issues. Firstly, there was an inaccurate plan showing a fence which wasn't intended to be proposed. This has been amended. Secondly, there was a query about whether permitted development rights had been removed for the subject property. Officers have confirmed that certain permitted development rights, including those which would permit any extension, have indeed been removed. Both of these matters have now been resolved and the report has been amended accordingly. I'll first show you some photos of the site and then I'll take you through the proposals. So this is the site, 1 Denmead Close outlined in red. The site sits on the corner of Denmead Close with its front door facing Abinger Way to the south. The property benefits from a detached garage with car parking to the front of it. To the west is 9 Abinger Way, and to the north is 2 Denmead Close. This is an aerial view of the site. You can see that 1 Denmead Close has its front door just here, fronting Abinger Way, and the majority of its garden space is to the side. The property has an existing conservatory, which you can just see here. 2 Denmead Close is located here, and there is a side-facing window which serves a dining room. Denmead Close slopes up so that number 2 is on higher ground than number 1. This photo is taken from Abinger Way and shows the front elevation of 1 Denmead Close. There's a garage to the left here with parking to the front of it. You can note here that the land level drops down towards Abinger Way and that the garden is surrounded by a fence which is set back several metres from the road. Moving around to Denmead Close, this is the side of number 1. And this is number 2, Denmead Close, located slightly up the hill. This photo is taken from the side garden of number 1. And you can see numbers 2, 3 and 4, Denmead Close in the background. This photo is taken from the rear of number 1, Denmead Close, looking towards the side elevation of number 2, Denmead Close. Here you can see the side-facing ground floor window of number 2, which serves a dining room. Standing in between the conservatory and the boundary fence, you can see that same window just there. This photo is taken from the rear garden of number 2. These rear-facing windows serve a kitchen. Moving down the side of number 2, Denmead Close, you can see the gap between the dining window, just here, and the boundary fence. To the right, you can see the existing conservatory of number 1, Denmead Close. Moving inside the property at number 2, Denmead Close, this photo is taken from inside that dining room. Looking out towards the existing conservatory, and this is a set of French doors just to the right here. This is another photo taken from inside the dining room, this time looking towards the kitchen window and the side garden of number 1. So moving on to the proposals. This is an existing site plan at the top. Here you can see an existing conservatory at the rear of number 1 Denmead Close. There are two proposals. Firstly, there is a rear and side extension, just located here, which is located to the north of the site, adjacent to the boundary with number 2 Denmead Close. There is also another proposal to extend the garden space by increasing the land level where it fronts Abinger Way. These are some existing and proposed floor plans. The proposals would create a larger kitchen diner and a separate playroom. There are French doors which would face south. There are bifold doors which would face west and a window which would face east. There are 5 roof lights proposed. Moving on to the elevations. From the rear, the extension would stretch across the whole width of the house and slightly further out. From the front elevation, you can see that extension slightly further out. And from the side, you can see the pitch of the roof, which is proposed, with the lowest level being adjacent to the boundary with number 2 Denmead Close. These proposals show the land level change proposed for the portion of garden fronting Abinger Way. At its highest, this would create a drop of about 1 metre to the pavement. A condition is recommended to require a hedge to be planted and maintained along the top edge of this to protect resident safety and maintain their privacy. An informative is also recommended to ensure that the footway is protected and the adjacent street light. This is an existing and proposed roof plan. You can see the 5 roof lights proposed there. The application has been the subject of a number of letters of objection from a single household. Many matters raised are not material planning consideration, and the report reflects this. Material matters which have been raised include the impact on amenity. The proposed extension is located close to the boundary with number 2 Denmead Close, and the property does have a dining room which is served primarily by a side-facing window, which would look directly towards the proposed extension. However, the proposal is only for a single-storey extension, and the gap between the two structures would be around 2 metres. Number 2 Denmead Close sits on slightly higher ground, which helps to mitigate any impact. And the dining room has glazed doors, which provide some borrowed light from the lounge to the front of the house. Impact on light and outlook would be minimal. The proposed extension helps to protect the privacy of residents of both of the properties, because it would block the unobstructed views into the conservatory, windows and garden of 1 Denmead Close that are currently possible. The development must be judged on its merits against the development plan because the property doesn't benefit from permitted development rights for extensions. Having taken that into account, the proposals are considered acceptable in amenity terms. Members will be aware from the report and from the updates report that an objector has protected characteristics, which may mean that they are affected more during the construction phase than someone else might be. Members must have regard to this in order to satisfy the public sector equality duty as set out within the Equality Act. By way of a further update, since the publication of the updates report, a further letter of representation has been received from the same household. No new matters have been raised. Having considered the proposals, officers recommend approval of the application subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you very much. We have got 3 speakers, and the first one is Adrian Porter. Thank you, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and committee, please bear in mind I struggle with PTSD, so my delivery will have to be probably a bit slow.
If we go on 4 or 5 minutes, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to start, so hopefully everyone can hear me, in regards to the actual dimensions on the plans which invalidate the application. The office report relies on false dimensions, actually rendering it procedurally unsafe and professionally indefensible. Nowhere does the officer mention the distance between the walls of number 1 and number 2, but solely relies on inaccurate plans. In my view, that alone invalidates the application and requires refusal. My own measurements using a laser tool, which has an accuracy of plus or minus 1.5 millimeters, shows from our wall to the centre of the fence we have 1.1 meters, not 1.0 meters. Our wall to number 1 conservatory has 2.1 meters, not 1.08 meters. And the most important relevance here is the fact that our wall to number 1's wall has a dimension of 5.46 meters. To accommodate a 3.6 metre extension and a 1 metre gap to the fence requires an additional 240 millimetres to appear from nowhere. We've repeatedly called for a topographical survey. I check topographical surveys and design output as part of my work as a civil engineer. That is on regional and national infrastructure works. I do not agree that the information is correct. Maybe an alternative would be to have someone else actually to validate these independently. Next item, planning offers inconsistency and procedural double standards. The original officer's report for the 25th of December committee meeting, and please can I have our number 1 slide up, please, is from our solicitor. Committee meeting, or the committee report explicitly acknowledged harm, but justified approval by leaning heavily on permitted development rights. Our solicitor rightly challenged that, and that's on the bottom of page 1. There's other things in there which he is also challenged, but I've only got 3 minutes. In the latest report, the officer has changed position. The harm is no longer acknowledged. It's been erased. Planning decisions must be based on evidence, policy, and principled reasons, not shifting narratives to justify a predetermined outcome. Paragraph 50. The officer states that while permitted development rights were referred to, this is the report written for yourselves. The officer states that while permitted development rights were referred to as a fallback position in the previous report, that was not the sole reason for recommending approval. Claiming additional reasons without stating them is a procedural shortcut that obscures the truth and attempts to recast the narrative to deny harm altogether. I'd like to deal with the invalid protected disability assessment. This is a consideration undertaken rather than due regard. The officer fails to properly address that I live with PTSD and have done for nearly 20 years. A protected disability under the Equality Act. Treating construction noise as merely temporary ignores the reality. There'll be no way in our home for me to escape the proximity and intensity of the works. The courts state that the duty must be exercised in substance, with rigour and with open mind. The duty has to be interrogated with the discharge of public functions of the authority. It's not a question of ticking boxes. No informed assessment has been carried out. No engagement with me. No consultation with a psychologist. That is not due regard. It is simply consideration. That's a procedural failure. Paragraph 38. Describing the extension as a modest expansion of internal floor space is grossly false. Could I have slide 2 up as well, please? This relates to what is and what isn't considered relevant for an application. But I say, describing the extension as a modest expansion of internal floor space is grossly false. With an existing footprint of approximately 64 square metres and a proposed increase of about 48 square metres, the change is around 75%. No reasonable professional or policy framework would label a 75% footprint increase as modest. Paragraph 39. Construction noise and disturbance are dismissed as temporary and not a reason for refusal. I don't think that's what it says on this slide. The monitoring officer of the City Council has confirmed that working from home is material to amenity. This has not been mentioned. The report provides no analysis of duration, proximity, or intensity of the disruption. I'm a civil engineer. I totally understand it. For affected occupiers, the harm is significant and foreseeable. My closing statement. Apologise if I've gone on for a bit. This application is opposed by our councillor, our planning consultant, an architect who's done some 3D plans for us. So if you have a look at number 5 and number 6. These are 3D external. That one's a good one to show how close this thing comes to us, especially when you take into consideration the real dimensions. Our solicitor opposes it. Our maintenance contractor opposes it, which my wife will talk about. Scaffolding controls oppose it because it makes our life very difficult, if not impossible, to maintain our property. The estate agent, who's come round and can't believe this. Building control officer, and also our neighbours who will be affected with the noise across the road because they too work from home. If this committee has any reservations about the accuracy of the dimensions, the safety implications, the amenity harm, or the failure to assess disability impact, then the only lawful and proportionate course is to refuse the application. Planning permission cannot be granted on the basis of uncertainty, procedural shortcuts, or untested assumptions. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. And Marianne Porter. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
This design causes serious permanent harm, not just to us, but every future owner of both number 1 and number 2 Denmead Close, as it leaves both houses with key areas that are effectively impossible to maintain. Slide 1, please. Here's a photo of how our dining room looks now. It is one of the main rooms and a focal point of our house. Being south facing, it is light, bright and sunny. With the door usually left open, the light spreads into the hall. Slide 2, please. The light and brightness in the dining room would be replaced by a building that looks industrial from this angle and is extremely close, just over 1.5 metres away, once you include the overhanging eaves and guttering. The officer claims we'll see only 40 centimetres of brick wall, but with the window just 87.5 centimetres high, that's nearly half our view. And the rest is taken up by ugly guttering and a dark grey roof rising to number 1's upper story. And yet, no BRA daylight assessment has been carried out. Slide 3, please. The planning officer describes this as minor in scale and impact. On the left, we have what minor looks like from the outside, and on the right, we have what minor looks like from the inside. Slide 4, please. The council's construction noise. The council's own monitoring system has confirmed that construction noise must be treated as a material planning consideration. All of our main rooms are on the same side of our house as where the building site will be, just 1.1 metres away from our border, including, of course, the dining room window, which will look straight onto it. For at least 6 to 9 months, the noise will be unbearable, with nowhere in the house to escape it. Our garden will be unusable and working from home impossible. Our jobs depend on home working. My office is 380 miles away. Adrian's 160. So travelling in isn't an option. This put both of our jobs seriously at risk. Slide 5, please. Both houses rely on number 1's garden for essential roof repairs, but that space will be almost completely built over. As you can see from the slide, once the extension is built, that space is gone permanently. The planning officer claims there's 2.08 metres between the properties, but that's wall to wall, not usable working space. Once you allow for eaves, guttering and the measurement error in the plans, there's less than a metre left, nowhere near enough for scaffolding. This isn't a private matter between This isn't a private matter between landowners, as the planning officer suggests. You can't maintain 2 homes when there's no physical space to do so. That's a serious design fault with the plans and has a clear impact on amenity for both properties. Slide 3 again, please. To sum up, this proposal is not a minor extension. It would replace light and open outlook with a close-up view of something that looks industrial. With construction taking place just 1.1 metres from our home, we would be living on a building site with constant noise, no quiet refuge, and both of our jobs under threat. And once built, it would leave both houses with extremely difficult maintenance issues, creating permanent problems for every future owner. The measurements should have been independently checked by a surveyor. I respectfully ask you to refuse this application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Councillor Lubbock. And you have 3 minutes as well, Judith.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak today, and I do so in support of the Marianne and Adrian Porter. I'll concentrate on the adverse amenity impacts from the proposed extension, loss of daylight and loss of outlook. Loss of daylight and loss of outlook to the side-facing window, and the scale of the proposed extension, creating an oppressive and overbearing living environment for Marianne and Adrian. I visited their property twice, and as a result can appreciate the unconventional layout of the properties in Denmead Close, especially the relationship between number 1, the application site, and the objector's home at number 2. The application site is a corner plot with its front door facing south towards Abinger Way. Marianne and Adrian's home is to the rear of number 1, but sideways to it, with their main dining room workroom window sideways onto number 1. It is this unusual relationship between the two properties that makes the extension unacceptable, I believe. The size of the extension brings it so close to number 2 that it bridges the gap between the two properties to make them almost look attached at ground level. These detached properties were all built with sufficient amount of space between them to keep the regular detached pattern of development, which will be lost as a consequence of this proposal. Marianne and Adrian have a dining room window which will face the 13.5 metre extension. It's an important window as it's the only one in that room, and it also lets daylight into the hall and the whole of the ground floor of the property. A window which is essential for daylight, but also for the outlook it provides. An outlook which will be replaced with a wall of harsh red bricks barely 2 metres away, creating an overbearing, intrusive structure. The report says that overshadowing and loss of outlook to the ground floor window of number 2 would be minimal and unlikely to have a notable impact. This is a subjective opinion without any detailed sunlight, daylight, overshadowing assessment to accurately measure the level of light loss resulting from the proposed extension. We hear that both Marianne and Adrian work from home. Adrian would use this as his main workroom and consequently spend many hours in the room, and any loss of daylight is likely to have an unacceptable adverse impact on him. Tolerance of light levels varies from one individual to another, and continual low light levels can have severe effects on a person's well-being, and it is in this context that it's felt that the size and position of the extension is unacceptable. Marianne and Adrian have gone to the lengths they have to oppose this, what is to them, this unacceptable extension, fearing the loss of their ability to continue to enjoy their home. In summary, I feel that the application as submitted is inappropriate, as the proposal would cause severe harm to Marianne and Adrian's amenity and would result in a significant loss of light and outlook, as well as resulting in an oppressive form with a significant overbearing impact on Marianne and Adrian's at number 2 Denmead Close, that being contrary to policy DM2 of the adopted local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. The scheme, I believe, should not be supported in its current form, and therefore I ask you to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lubbock. We have got the applicant here, Tom Skinner. And you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Morning, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Tom Skinner, and My wife and I, Georgina Skinner, are the applicants for 1 Denby Close. We've lived in Eton now for 8 years, and our son goes to the local primary school. Eton is really somewhere we've come to love, a peaceful, friendly neighbourhood where people take pride in their homes and communities. Our application is for a single-storey side extension and rear extension, replacing an old conservatory, and to level a small part of our front garden to incorporate it within our back garden so it can be used safely as an outdoor space for our family. It's a simple, practical improvement to make our home work better for our young family. We've listened carefully throughout the process. When concerns were raised about the original design, we immediately removed the 2-storey element and worked with the planning officer to reduce the scale and to ensure it sits comfortably within the plot. The result is a single-storey extension that's well within our boundary, using matching materials and mirrors the style and similar extension of other homes in the area. The officer's thorough report concludes that the proposal fully complies with policy. It's not overdevelopment, won't cause any significant loss of light or outlook for the neighbours, and there are no highway or safety concerns. We've done everything asked of us and taken care to be considerate to those around us, whilst also balancing that against the needs of our family. On several occasions today, it's been referred to with the loss of light outlook has been referred to, and it has been touched upon that our neighbour's window looks directly into our conservatory, lounge, dining room and kitchen. And so really the result is at all times our family is currently overlooked by our neighbour's window. That said, we understand that your role is to balance the interests of individual residents with the wider character and fairness of the planning across the city. We've tried to approach this process in exactly the same spirit, with openness, patience and respect for both the planning system and our neighbours. We hope the committee will support the officer's recommendation for approval. We believe that this is a balanced and reasonable proposal that maintains the character of Denby Close while allowing our family to remain part of the community that we care deeply about. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Did the officer want to come back with any? No? Members, questions to the officer? Yes, Carla.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, if I may. The first is just whether officers could just comment on a little on the disagreement about the distance between the properties and just how the figures in the report have been put together, just so that the committee is clear on that. And the second is just a question about mitigating noise during construction. I just wonder if officers could comment on any conditions that might be available to the committee were we so minded to grant it, just to mitigate some of that.
Okay, yep, I can come back on those 2 points. So firstly, with regard to the distances, I undertook a thorough site visits to both number 1 and number 2, Denmead Close, and took numerous measurements whilst on site to verify the plans that had been submitted. All were very close to, if not exactly, what was indicated on the plans, and we feel comfortable that the plans are accurate for the assessment of this planning application. Regarding mitigating noise, there are 2 options available to members should they wish to take them. Firstly, we do have an informative which talks about considerate construction, which is a scheme that we encourage people to join and use, which sort of limits the time that you use certain machinery, the time that you're on site, that sort of thing, and that helps to mitigate noise from construction. There's also the option to add a construction management plan as a condition. We would normally recommend that on large schemes that are likely to last significantly longer than this one, and may have much more of an impact on surrounding neighbours, but given the circumstances and the neighbours' disability, members may feel that that's appropriate in this case.
Yeah, I think my question sort of follows on Carly's a little bit about the noise. I was going to ask about conditions as well. But on the equality and diversity issues, would it be possible to explain a little bit more about what the considerations the council and the committee have to take into account on this are, and exactly how that affects the decision we're going to be making?
Yeah, so the council needs to comply with the Public Sector Equality Duty, PSED, and in doing so, we need to have due regard to the disability that we're aware of, and that needs to form part of our assessment. So we may choose to apply certain conditions that you wouldn't otherwise apply, etc. Do you want to say anything further on that? Yeah, I'll leave you to.
The other thing, because there's two interacting bits of legislation here, there's the planning regulations which concern the use of land, and then there's the public sector equality duty that Lara's mentioned. Normally there's a principle within the planning acts that the characteristics of individuals do not justify either do not normally justify the approval or refusal of a planning permission. So, for example, we should not normally grant planning permission on the basis of the needs or otherwise of a particular individual, family, or whatever, nor should we refuse it normally on the basis of the characteristics or needs of a particular neighbour. Because we're the planning acts, and I think one of the slides that the objector put up kind of did mention this, we're about regulating the use of land in the public interest, not necessarily about protecting private interests one from another. So there is, whilst we have to have regard to the protected characteristics of individuals, they are not determinative of an application. Having said that, as Lara says, if there are if there are things that we can do to further mitigate the impact of a development, we can choose to, for example, attach conditions. We would not normally do so for an application of this scale, because one of the things that you have to bear in mind is if there's a balance to be struck with what is a relatively small construction project. If you limit the hours during the day, then you have the potential for actually increasing the duration of the project. But if members feel that in responding to one of the issues raised by the applicant, that a construction management plan would be appropriate, that could be considered.
Any other questions, Councillor Laws?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points of information, I think. First one is just briefly, is the proposed extension closer than the furthest point, if you like, of the existing conservatory?
So the wall of the extension would be exactly in line with the existing conservatory, but it would have more of a roof overhang than the existing conservatory has. So there would be whilst the wall would be in the same distance, the roof would be slightly closer.
How much closer would the roof be? Another point was, I just wonder if you could expand a bit more on amenity and the point that Councillor Lovett raised about loss of daylight and outlook, and how those two interact and what's relevant and what's material.
I'm just going to pull up a photo to support this. In fact, I'm going to use one of the 3D images. Sorry. So these 3D images were prepared by the neighbour, but from what we can see, they appear fairly accurate. So we are happy to use them to demonstrate this point. The current outlook and access to light is shown in the above image here, and the proposed with the extension as built would be something along the lines of what you can see in the bottom image here. So in terms of outlook from this window, at present it looks towards the protect the rear of number 1 Denmead Close. The outlook, when considering outlook, we're primarily considering access to views of the sky and not having a wall super close to a window, for instance, that would reduce outlook. In this case, only a very small part of the wall is visible in this view, and then the roof slopes away from the window. I would consider that loss of outlook to be fairly minimal. There's a minimal difference between these two images. In terms of light, again, this is a south-facing window. It does receive light during the day. That is going to be blocked by this 2-storey house for significant portions of the day, for significant portions of the year, and that wouldn't change as a result of this extension. And I think any loss of light to that window would be very minimal.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Young?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Firstly, so the blue sky we can see in the top picture, that would be the same in the bottom one, because obviously it's not coloured at the bottom. So I just wanted to double check that first.
Yes.
And you're saying yes. And sorry, the main question I had before that one popped up was about the issues with property maintenance that was raised by the objectors, because there would be such a minimal amount of area between the two houses. So if somebody did need scaffolding to be put up or something like that, how is that going to be likely with the extension that could still happen? Adequate property maintenance?
So this point, it's not really a material planning consideration. So we're not seeking to protect the maintenance rights of either neighbour as a result of this planning application. The neighbour's point is that they wouldn't be able to erect scaffolding in their neighbour's garden after this is built. So, but irrelevant. The point is not a material planning consideration.
Councillor Sains?
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me. Just getting away from this view for the moment, I'm just considering where there's a proposal to backfill part of the side and raise a garden. Will that affect any underground utilities in any way, like phone lines or water pipes or other sorts of things?
1 second, let me just get up the relevant image. So yes, the proposal is to extend the usable rear garden space by enclosing this area in a small retaining wall and levelling out the ground level. We've consulted with the Highways Authority. They're not concerned about impact of the works to the footway. However, we are recommending an informative that ensures that the footway would be protected during the construction works and this adjacent street light as well.
Sorry, can I just come back on that as well? The question was about whether or not there's utilities in there. There might be, but in common with most other construction projects, if there are utilities and cables in there, they will have to be managed in discussion with the provider, whether it's Anglian Water or whatever. So in terms of the actual impact upon those services, there's protection through the utility providers. They don't granting the planning permission doesn't mean that they can go in and just move the utilities. They would still be we're kind of, if you like, the first stage of a process. And if anything is found during that construction process, either on this part of the garden or on the or on the extension, there are still other processes that need to be gone through. I mean, some of those processes include building regs, but also any way leaves that might need to be granted. And we as a planning authority don't need to be concerned that whether or not this particular proposal actually complies with those regulations, because it's kind of an established principle that we effectively leave that to them. And we don't need to kind of go through all the kind of subsequent processes at this stage. That's not our job.
Thank you. Can I ask one? You were saying now about you've got to put a hedge so people don't fall off a cliff or something. Can you tell me whereabouts that is on there?
So that's in this image as well. So the proposal would be to increase the land level for this area of land. And there would then be a condition which would require details of hedge to be submitted and then implemented, which would be around the edge of that.
Do they mean they can't put up fencing?
So the permitted development rights which have been removed include the erection of fences. So if there was to be a fence erected along that edge, they would need to submit a planning application to us anyway, and that's not within this proposal.
Okay, but we're proposing they put a hedge here.
Correct.
Okay, Ash?
That's my mic's been lost. Can I ask another question about the equality and diversity aspects of it? So the applicant, not the applicant, sorry, one of the objectors did say that they didn't feel that had been duly followed. Can you comment a little bit more on that, please? And if, you know, if there's any way you think we might have not followed process, or, you know, if there's any bits of process that the applicant might have want followed but aren't actually processed, if you see what I mean.
I think, I mean, we have to have regard to how the proposal impacts upon anybody who has protected characteristics, and that can include the applicant or indeed the that can include the objector and indeed the applicant. So in this instance, the impacts upon the objectors are those that would impact upon other neighbours, but they may impact more intensely upon the current occupiers of the adjacent property. So in carrying out the assessment, we have had regard to that level of impact.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, we'll move on to discussions and proposals. Anyone wish to say anything one way or the other? If that's the case, I'll move on to the recommendation. Councillor Harbour.
Sorry, Chair. These microphones. Yeah, I'm minded to propose conditions because whilst I'm minded to support the application, I do take the point that the applicants made about construction disturbance and so on, and I think it would be proportionate for us to consider a construction management plan. I know it's usually reserved for larger developments, but I think in this case I'd be keen to explore that and putting some pretty tight conditions on construction noise.
Need a seconder for that? One or two on you? Okay. Anyone wish to speak against that? No, so we'll have a vote on that, put that in a condition.
Sorry, just for clarity, Chair, so the proposal is to add a condition to require a construction management plan. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's okay.
To noise mitigation.
Okay, so the proposal is to accept the planning recommendation to approve with the recommendation for improvement plan. Working plan. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous.
We will approve the plan.
Yeah.
Right, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Two in.
Got no great milk. Oh, cool. One great. Oh yeah. I forgot that the other day. Ah. Has he left the meeting good? Jenny? Yeah, if not, you can't come in. I mean, okay. Anyone else need to learn this? Thank you very much for that 5 minutes. We'll now move on to 4.1 application, which is Claymore Mount, and I'll ask Gemma to take us through the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. The application seeks consent for a 3-bedroom dwelling and associated works on the side garden of an existing dwelling at Cheyham Mount. This is the red line plan for the application, which wraps around number 9 Cheyham Mount itself and abutting the highway verge that lies adjacent to Penshurst Mews. The existing dwelling benefits from a large rear and side garden. The corner plot lies adjacent to the corner of Cheyham Mount and Penshurst Mews. Number 9 Cheyham Mount itself is set back from the highway with off-street parking and a front garden. The existing garden has established landscaping comprising mature shrubs and trees. The proposal would include the subdivision of the site to accommodate a single dwelling marked by the star on the screen there. So you can see in the photos here that the topography of the land does slope gradually up, so gradually up towards Penshurst Mews, and also to the rear, so going up Penshurst Mews to the south and to the east, meaning that the surrounding dwellings along Penshurst Mews sit higher than the dwelling itself at number 9 Cheyham Mount. Both the proposed dwelling and the existing dwelling would each have sufficient off-street car parking in accordance with the council's parking standards, together with sufficient rear amenity space. One comment received during the original consultation raised concerns regarding the loss of existing trees and vegetation on the site. However, as you can see on the block plan here, the trees would be retained, and no trees are proposed for removal, and the dwelling itself can be accommodated whilst retaining existing vegetation. The application was supported by a tree report that recommends no construction activities to take place within root protection areas, except as indicated in the method statement that supported the application. This further concludes that development can be accommodated with minimal impacts on the retained trees. The council's trees officers reviewed this and confirms that they are in agreement with the recommendations. The proposals would result in some natural overshadowing to the proposed dwelling. However, it's considered that the future occupiers would still benefit from dappled light through the trees, whilst benefiting from the trees' visuals and environmental value. Some additional neighbour comments raised concerns regarding the potential for overlooking to number 4 Penshurst Mews, which is just behind me in the photo here. So this is looking towards number 9 with Penshurst Mews to the back of me. So whilst the new dwelling would be constructed immediately adjacent to the existing southern boundary, this highway verge that you can see in the photo there would be retained, as well as the highway itself. And this would give a sense of a landscape buffer. So the proposal would be separated from number 4 Penshurst Mews by the existing public highway, which gives a separation distance of 10 metres from both the dwellings and a window-to-window separation distance of 15 metres. The proposed developments therefore not considered to result in a loss of privacy or create a harmful level of overlooking to the neighbouring property. So these are the proposed plans in front of us here. You can see that the southern openings on the host dwelling are blacked out, and these are proposed to be removed to ensure that there's not going to be a direct overbearing impact from the proposed dwelling. And an introduction of windows are proposed to the rear of bedroom 1 and also to the front of the living room at ground floor. This alteration would remove any potential direct overshadowing or loss of outlook resulting from the proposed development, and this results in an acceptable impact. The proposals were amended during the course of the application and to develop a design that responds to the character of the area. The revised design adopts a simple low-profile roof form, which slopes away from the highway rather than presenting a gable end, which was previously proposed.
This approach reduces the overall visual prominence of the dwelling when viewed from the street and allows it to sit more comfortably within the established building line, as can be seen on the street scene images in front of you. The design, coupled with the synthetic materials, would result in an acceptable visual form of development. Given that the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of land for housing, the tilted balance as set out in paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged. In such circumstances, planning permission should be granted unless the application of policies in the NPPF provide a clear reason for refusal. For the reasons set out in the report, it's considered that the proposed development accords with all relevant national and local planning policies and would not result in any significant detrimental harm in respect to the relevant material planning considerations. Members are therefore recommended to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in paragraph 62 of the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
We've got no speakers on this one. Questions by members? Councillor Sands.
Yeah, let me just pull up the block plan. So it will be immediately adjacent to the boundary, but what's quite deceptive by some of the photos is there's a really dense vegetation along that boundary, which is public highway. So it would still be set off from that immediate road there.
Okay, can I just follow up on that? There's a change to the exit parking law, cars coming out. Whereabouts is that on there?
So this is the proposed access down the bottom, and then you've got the existing access, which serves, this is number 9. And then that's the existing access that serves number 9.
Yeah.
So the proposed access would be onto Cheyham Mount, just next to
So
it.
they both use that exit, yeah?
This is an additional exit here, this access.
Additional one?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's just a crossover.
thank you. Councillor Levick.
Yes, can I just ask if there is access to the rear garden? Yeah, and the other question is just to if you could reiterate that there are no trees being felled as a consequence.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I appreciate the plans aren't the most clear. Apologies for that. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So yeah, this moves quite quickly, but there is pedestrian access to the rear garden just to the side here. Apologies, it is quite blurry. And yes, there are no trees to be removed.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick bit of information. You mentioned the proposed new dwelling will go right up to the boundary, but does that allow for foundations? Presumably the foundations won't go into the public highway space.
As far as I'm aware, it would, but I have to be honest, I haven't asked that question as part of this application.
Right, I was thinking obviously if the wall is right up against the boundary, then the foundations must go a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been considered as part of the ARB report. If you're concerned about vegetation, I'm not sure.
I'm just interested in a point of information how that works. That allow for that in the plans.
I think that would be again kind of similar to the previous application. How you do the foundations and stuff like that is something that will be covered under building regs. If they do need to go onto the highway, then there are kind of ways and means of agreeing that, but we needn't concern ourselves with that.
So the objection about the overlooking with was it number 4 Penhurst Mews, and it apparently there's going to be a 15-metre gap, which is considered acceptable. But is there any way we could impose a condition that there has to be I don't know, something planted so that avoids any overlooking at all, or is that just not? There's no room for that, no possibility.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, there really isn't any room because it is going to be immediately adjacent to that boundary. But I sort of tried to show in the photos that the vegetation on the highway verge does provide would provide the same effect as planting that we would otherwise potentially look at conditioning. So that gives that sort of softened edge along the immediately adjacent to that highway there. You've then got the public highways to the roads, which again is another sort of perceived separation, and then number 4 being set back. So the window to window distance was considered acceptable on that basis.
Nothing could be built on the land adjacent, which is public highway land, I know, but
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not, when I say built, I mean planted, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Now we'll move on to recommendations or anyone discussions. Anyone? No? Well, the recommendation is to approve. All those in favour, oh, I need a seconder for that first, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous as well, thank you very much, thank you, Gemma. Thank you. We move on now to 20 Colgate. This has been here before as well a few years ago. And I'll ask Sarah to take us through the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Chair's just said, this application, some of you may or may not remember, this application was before members back in September 2021. It's an application for the demolition of an existing public house and construction of a 3.5-storey building to provide 15 1- and 2-bedroom flats on a site at Cowgate, which is just to the east of Magdalen Street. So here's the application site. It's at the junction of Cowgate, which is to the north on the red line there, and Peacock Street. Magdalen Street is just to the left-hand side, just off the plan there, and Anglia Square currently in the process of demolition. The large extent of sort of blankness to the south there is the Roy's store, which this site directly abuts. This is a photograph of the site back when members considered it in 2021. The site hadn't been used for a couple of years. The pub had closed down, and it was sort of boarded up at that point. This is a more recent, rather sorry site. The site's been secured by hoarding, but is obviously becoming increasingly derelict. So just a few elevations here of the proposals that were put in front of members previously. There are no changes to the form, the design of the building. It's a 3-storey building with rooms in the roof and small dorm of windows and roof lights, with pitched roofs, and it will sit directly adjacent to the footway to reinstate a historic sort of building line along there, which was considered and discussed as part of the proposals back in 2021. There's just an indication there of the extent of the site that the building will cover. It's a small site, and it's quite a dense form of development. There's just a small courtyard to the rear for the servicing and bins, bikes, etc. So as I say, there's a need to reconsider the application in light of some changes that have taken place since 2021. So the report sets out that the application we've got is practically exactly the same as the one that was before members in 2021. It's still 15 1- and 2-bedroom flats. The change, however, is that there will that scheme included 3 units of affordable housing. Since the resolution to approve, the applicant went through an exercise to have a look at what registered providers might be interested in taking on those units, contacted a number of affordable housing providers, and for varying reasons they were not interested in taking on those units in this location within a mixed block. So they came back to us and it was agreed with us and with the development strategy manager that a commuted sum for off-site affordable housing provision could be accepted in lieu of that provision. And this is something that our affordable housing supplementary planning document allows. We then went straight into sort of delays around progressing that section 106 to secure these measures, because there was an anomaly in the land ownership in the title. Then got sort of held up by heading straight on into nutrient neutrality coming upon us, which meant we couldn't issue any decisions on anything for a considerable number of years until mitigation could be secured. We've now sort of moved beyond that, and credits are available for this scheme. And in the meantime, there's been increasing costs associated with the construction, costs associated with the purchase of those credits that I just mentioned, and payment of recreation impact tariff. And it all adds up together, which made the applicant have a look, reconsider what the position was, and have a viability review of the position. There are policies within local and national policy that allow affordable housing requirements to be reviewed in light of any viability issues on the site. So we've got local plan policy GNLP 5, and there's a paragraph in the NPPF that allows that sort of consideration to be taken into account. In this instance, the review has concluded that 0 affordable housing provision can be made on this site now. If the absence of affordable housing can be accepted, then it could be subject to review at a future point through what we call an affordable housing viability review clause, which comes from our affordable housing SPD, and that's set out within your report what the terms would be. So the applicant got a suited qualified RICS professional to put together a report, submitted that to the council, and officers have considered that in conjunction with the development strategy manager and have accepted the information that's been provided to us. Other sort of things that have changed in between 2021 and now is there have been some updates to the policy framework, which I've tried to set out the main ones that are that are relevant to this case as main issue 1 in your report. And it's in this updated policy context that officers are considering this application, and the provision of housing, general needs housing, feel that it's something that needs to be given substantial positive weight, along with the positive regeneration benefits you've seen from the photograph that the site continues to be derelict. And it's a brownfield site, and there are substantial weight should be afforded to sort of regeneration of sustainable brownfield sites. There's also support within the NPPF for development of small sites such as this, because the benefits that this brings to small and medium enterprise builders and developers, and they acknowledge that they make a important contribution cumulatively, and can often sort of allow sites to get away and get under construction quicker than perhaps more complex sites do. So just in conclusion, from the officer assessment, we previously concluded back in 2021 that the design and scale of the development was appropriate for the site, given its historical and current context, and any amenity or heritage impacts represented low levels of harm. So it's not necessary to go into any more detail about that, which is why I've not given a more detailed presentation on those matters. Impact on protected sites protected under the habitats regulations is covered within the report because it's important consideration, and we're now at a point where those impacts can be satisfactorily mitigated through securing those nutrient neutrality credits, as we call them, and addressing visitor impacts through the payment of a recreational access mitigation strategy tariff. So while the lack of affordable housing may diminish some of the weight that can be given to the provision of housing due to the more limited tenure offer that is mix that is offered, it would still, it's officer opinion that it would still amount to a positive weight, and it would not amount to adverse impacts that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development when you consider it against the NPPF as a whole. And this is paragraph 11D of the NPPF. So just finally to emphasise that officers consider that substantial weight should be applied to the positive contribution of provision of housing to meet an identified housing need on this derelict, highly sustainable brownfield site. And it's sites like this with potential that then have potential to stimulate wider neighbourhood renewal in the northern city centre, alongside the proposals at Anglia Square. And together we consider these outweigh any minor adverse impacts. So especially when you're applying the tilted balance position and the fact that we're not in a position at the moment where we have a 5-year housing land supply. So this has resulted in the officer recommendation to approve, subject to the conditions set out in page 64 and 65 of your report. There is an additional condition that I've covered in the updates report, that there was an omission from the conditions. There's a heritage interpretation condition that was approved by members back in 22-21, so there's an additional condition. Plus also subject to the purchase of the nutrient neutrality credits before a decision is issued, and provision of a section 106 to secure an affordable housing viability review clause and the RAMS tariff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David, you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can just say a little bit, just because this isn't normal. This application has already been before. I mean, I appreciate that not everybody on this particular committee was party to that decision, but this application has already been before the council as local planning authority, and there has already been a resolution to approve it. So obviously there's been a significant delay in issuing the decision. That's been caused in part because of legal issues about ownership of a very small portion of the site, but also because of nutrient neutrality. And that, notwithstanding any legal issues, if we had not finished drafting the section 106 between the report being the resolution in September 2021 and the Natural England letter of March 2022, we would not have been able to issue a decision on this planning application, because that's what the habitat regs say. We would have had to consider the impact upon the protected sites. So we have an unusual circumstance in which the council, as local planning authority, not necessarily you as individual members, has already made a decision on this application. You have the planning applications committee, the local planning authority, has already resolved to approve. So what you're looking at here is what has changed. The physicality of the scheme has not changed. In terms of the scheme itself, what has changed is it no longer provides affordable housing, as Sarah has set out in the presentation. But that isn't the only thing that's changed. The policy environment in which you're considering this application now has also changed. You have a new NPPF, which contains paragraphs that are supportive of redevelopments of brownfield sites, saying that the local planning authority needs to give substantial weight to the redevelopment of brownfield sites. You have a Greater Norwich local plan, which adopted a lower percentage of affordable housing. It went down from 30 33% to 28%, acknowledging the difficulties in bringing forward sites for redevelopment in the city. You also have a circumstance wherein the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of land for housing, which engages the tilted balance, which further pushes you towards considering the supply of housing regardless of the tenure that this site can bring forward. So you are unusually constrained in your ability to consider this application. You cannot open up everything because the council has already considered quite a lot of this. So you need to focus down on what has changed between the resolution in 21 and this meeting here at the back end of 25. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? I've got one. Just on the recommendations, there's one in there about construction traffic management plan. And that was agreed last time, 3 or 4 years ago, but since then Angler Square started and there's a bit of traffic around there now. So I was just wondering which way they were going to go, or would they go the same way as a traffic management plan for Angler Square?
It's yet to, the detail would be determined at the point that they put that in, but we don't. Okay. But yeah, you'd expect the traffic management to be put together by usually put together by transport consultants, and they'd look at what's going on in the area at that point in time. And if they didn't, when they submitted it to it with mindful of what's happening, we'd ask them to look at it.
Okay.
And just to add to that, the county council has a network management team who would look at everything else that's going on in the area. So obviously if this scheme is developed, then some construction management will be in place for Anglia Square, and the county we would consult the county on any traffic routing and things like that for this site, and it would have to fit in with that.
Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, if I may. First of all, am I correct in that they haven't actually bought or purchased any credits for nutrient neutrality on this project so far? And second question, why was it necessary to refer to the Human Rights Act in respect to this application on page 61? And my third question, did the applicant approach City Council with a view to managing the affordable housing component? And I did a quick calculation. There were only 3 affordable dwellings on this, and 28% of 15 dwellings actually works out to 4 affordable dwellings, you know, doing a quick percentage calculation. So it's already below the current required level anyway. So I find this all very, very curious, if you wouldn't mind responding to those questions.
I'll work backwards because I've got the first question. But so the last question about affordable housing was, so yes, they did approach they approached 9 registered providers, and some just weren't interested and didn't give very much of a response. Some, it was, I suppose, fairly common themes around not accepting, like say, a small number of properties, not accepting properties that are in a mixed block where it becomes difficult around shared areas and service charges. When we had that information submitted to us, and I had conversations with housing at the time, I did ask that question of our development strategy team, and it wasn't a site that they were interested in taking on either, is what I was told at the time. The calculation, it was set out in more detail in that previous report. The site benefits from having a vacant building on there, so they're able to discount the floor space from that. So you end up with a lower level of affordable housing. So that I'd set that was set out, and it'll be in your Appendix 1 as to how the 3 units were derived because of the vacant building credit. like David said, there has been a slight change to the affordable housing amount that policy requires now, but it wouldn't have actually lowered the provision. It certainly wouldn't have increased the provision, so it would still remain at three units. And then the offsite contribution would be worked out based on that 3 units. 2 was the human rights is the human rights paragraph is we have to it's part of what we have to include within our considerations, and it's within all our reports. And I can't from memory until I've
page 61, wasn't
it? 61.
And basically, we have a duty to consider the Human Rights Act in terms of the council and exercising all our duties.
Yeah.
So there'll be a paragraph on that in every single application that comes to committee.
It's just seemed to be 3 paragraphs sort of linked, and that was paragraph 52, paragraph 56 and paragraph 57, and I just found the whole thing a little bit curious because I couldn't see. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely totally and fully in support of both the ECHR and European Court of Human Rights, but I couldn't see the relevance of this paragraph to this application at all.
It's just something that needs to be taken into account in every decision the council makes. And we're just acknowledging that we have considered that and agree that there was no more detail that needs to be gone into in this particular case.
And the other one was credit.
Oh, it was credits.
Yes, we ask where items are coming to committee. We're asking the applicant to provide proof that they've been to a credit provider. In this case, they've been to Norfolk Environmental Credits and they have credits allocated to them. But until there is a resolution from members, we're not asking them to purchase those credits because, for obvious reasons, so they have credits allocated to this project. If the application was to be approved, then they pay for those credits, and then a decision can be issued.
Councillor Harbour.
Thank you. Noted what officers have said about the difficulty of finding an RP, and I, kind of can fully understand the reasons. I think I imagine I probably speak for everyone, just expressing disappointment about the lack of contribution towards affordable housing. But I just wonder if officers could be really explicit with the committee of what the impact of refusal of this application would be. What would happen as a result?
That all depends on what the grounds of refusal were. If you refused it on the basis that it didn't provide affordable housing, my advice to you is that would not be defensible, because both national and local policy allow for viability to be considered as a material consideration. The viability appraisal that has been prepared, it's been prepared by a competent person. It's been reviewed internally. So at the moment, the evidence is that this development would not come forward with if it was asked to provide affordable housing. So yeah, my advice is that you could not defend a reason for refusal on the absence of affordable housing.
Respectfully, that wasn't really my question. I understand that it wouldn't be defensible, but I'm just asking, can you be explicit? What would happen if we refused this application? What would happen with the site?
So what would happen with the site?
Yeah, what would happen with the site? What are the consequences of us refusing this?
Nothing would happen with the site.
Sorry, again, just to be explicit, we're saying that this would not come forward. These houses, nothing would be built. The site would remain empty. Is that what we're saying?
There will be no consent for redevelopment of this site if you refuse this application now.
Thank you. That's what I was asking.
Councillor Young.
Sorry if you've said this already. I've been trying to get my head around a lot of applications this morning because I subbed at the last minute. Is the decision between around the affordable housing, do we just decide, is it a decision between, yes, they have to provide mitigation for these 3 dwellings to be off-site, or it's none at all? Or can they be required to mitigate with 1 off-site dwelling or 2 off-site dwelling? Is it a case of
No.
3 or nothing?
It's nothing. At the moment, the recommendation before you is that this application is approved subject to a section 106 that doesn't include the provision of affordable housing. So no affordable housing will be secured off the back of this development, unless, because there are 2 kind of standard review clauses, because part of the difficulty in making decisions with affordable housing is you have to consider what's in front of you at the point in time that you make the decision. And obviously we've seen that things can change. So what there would still be a section 106, and correct me if I'm getting the timescales wrong, Sarah, but the review clause is if there's no commencement within 12 months of consent being granted, then the viability is reviewed. So that may, if things change, there may be opportunity to make a contribution at that point. And then there is a subsequent review if there is no occupation within 36 months of commencement. There's another review clause. So those are designed to capture any changes in the market which might make, and it would be off-site provision of affordable housing. But at the moment, the recommendation is that this development does not provide affordable housing because it would not come forward if it did.
So there's no option to say provide 1 or 2. It's 3 or nothing. That's it.
Yeah.
Can I just a little bit more context? The viability appraisal does include what's they call sensitivity analysis in there, analysis. So they've looked at options of if you could increase revenue, so your sales values by 15%, and if your construction costs decrease by 15%, and it still wasn't viable. Separate from that, before they even got somebody involved to put that report together, they were considering, well, what if I made it, what if I developed more than 15? What if I made it bigger? And that sort of undoes where we were originally, because they originally came in for more. It was too big, it was too bulky. So you then get into those impacts on the heritage side of things. So the size and the scale is appropriate. So you can only get so many units there.
Okay, any more questions? That kind of sounds.
Why is it I can understand why they don't want to have an affordable housing component. They claim it's not affordable, but the developer also wants the provision of providing no commuted sum for off-site development. If their margins are that tight, I don't think it's a viable application. So why aren't they offering a commuted sum?
For exactly the same reason, that it would make the scheme unviable. It's money off the off the viability of the scheme, regardless of whether it's on-site or off-site. So it's not viable with an on-site provision. Plus, there's no our registered providers who are interested in taking on-site provision, and it's equally not viable with a contribution to off-site provision.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to discussion now. Councillor Lovick.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was only 3 of us that were on this committee in 2021, and only 2 of us voted for it. So, Chair and myself.
Yeah.
I accept that there's been a viability assessment, and I accept that it does show that this is not a viable development unless we leave out the affordable housing. And I think we may well see others come forward in a similar form. And I think we just have to accept that officers and specialist officers have done that viability, and it does produce what it's produced here. I'm also very pleased that it's come forward now, because just when the whole of Anglia Square is being redeveloped, I mean, this is part of it, and I think it's a time when we have to be pragmatic and say, taking into account the viability, taking into account the rising costs, the rise of the nutrient neutrality issue that puts further costs into the equation. I think we do need to be pragmatic and acknowledge the contribution that 15 flats will make to our housing supply, and the fact that, you know, small sites like this can be got off the ground quicker than a huge development. So I'm very happy to vote the same way as I did in 2021, and that's in favour of it. And I hope others will do the same, and let's get 15 more dwellings up and running. Thank you.
Councillor Harbour.
Thank you, Chair. Keep this microphone. You know, I feel incredibly disappointed that we're in a situation where there's no affordable housing and no contribution towards affordable housing. But I do find myself in agreement with Councillor Lubbock. I accept that things, you know, have changed and there are additional costs, you know, kind of in the mix. You know, I find myself, you know, leaning towards supporting this, but with, you know, with, you know, some frustration. I think the idea that we could leave, you know, that, you know, we could leave an important site like this, you know, kind of behind hoardings, you know, blight on the landscape in an area that's you know, being invested in heavily is clearly not the way forward. And I find myself saying, well, bringing forward some housing is you know, is better than bringing forward no housing. You know, that doesn't change the fact that I feel very strongly that we should be driving up levels of affordable housing in the city. But the idea that, you know, and I was down there yesterday, you know, as we started demolishing Anglia Square, and we've got a fantastic story to tell in that area. And the idea of leaving this as an eyesore, you know, sits very, very uncomfortably with me. So I'm minded to support the application.
Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, I really don't want. You know, I'm having microphone problems. I really don't want to vote for this in the sense that it's going against all of our principles on affordable housing. And for me, and I know that cumulative impact isn't a thing at planning, but it is coming on the heels of all the problems we had of getting viability assessments for Anglia Square. It's an area of the city that was, when I moved there, I don't live particularly locally to the site, but I do live within 5 minutes walk of it. It was an area that was actually affordable for people to live in, and now it is not. And every step we take away from having these affordable areas that people can actually afford to live in, that are close to amenities, like that is a real knock for our city and our community. But given that the viability laws are the way they are, there isn't planning grounds to vote against this, I don't think, is there? And ultimately, that's what it comes down to at planning, isn't it? It comes down to whether we've got planning law, not what our principles are. My principles say do not vote for this. Planning law says, given the fact that the scale of development has been pre-agreed by the committee is acceptable, even if some of us here might not agree that. And given that planning law says that these viability assessments are allowed to be used in this way by developers, I think we're at risk of developers holding the city to ransom on these viability assessments, actually. But that's a policy question. I have policy questions on this, but none of them fitted into planning, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't want to vote for this.
Councillor Hampton.
Yeah, I largely agree with what's already been said about it. Obviously, we all personally would want to see affordable housing come forward on this site and others in that region of the city. But
at the end of the day, it's the viability situation has been laid out today and in the report. It's policy compliant to not deliver the affordable housing in this situation. So there doesn't seem to be a sound reason to turn this down. And especially since this last came to committee, I certainly wasn't here, but given the policy context changes, we've heard about the emphasis on building brownfields, 5-year land supply, etc. And the paper, I think, outlines the difficulties with this site to start with, which were always going to feed in with the viability. And I think it says that even never mind. So yeah, it's a difficult one. However, kind of strongly we feel, as Councillor Haynes says, in a kind of wider policy context about this, we've got to judge this against sort of the slightly changing situation we now find ourselves in. So fairly reluctantly, but we'll be voting in favour and support the application.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand the reasoning for not having an affordable housing component within the site. I find it highly objectionable, however, that the developers seem to think that they don't need to provide a commuted sum for this site. And I think what this does, it sends a message to other developers who will be looking at other similar sites around the city, say 12 to 15, maybe as many as 20 dwellings, that, oh, we can do a viability study and decide, oh yeah, it's not viable if we have to pay a commuted sum. So I don't support this. I can see that it will probably be passed, but I don't support this development with the lack of a commuted sum. And I think it should be noted that this could hold City Council to ransom by future developers on other sites, similar sites around the city. David.
Just on that point, it won't hold us to ransom. It doesn't. The principle of reviewing viability is already there. So if somebody else on another site wants to come forward and make the argument, then that is something that we will have to consider. What I do really feel for members in making this decision, because I recognise, I mean, you have a very difficult job when it comes to planning applications committee anyway, because you have to operate within a system, and you, to some extent, you have to do what the system says you can do, and you can't do what the system says you can't do. So I do feel the frustration in this, and I just want to stress that as officers, we're not letting developers off the hook. We do make sure that these viability appraisals are scrutinised. We go back to them time and time again and question their assumptions before we bring stuff before you. So we will always scrutinise these applications and try and get what we can out of them. Thank you.
Jenny.
Yeah, I just want to sort of second the comments about the frustration about the lack of affordable housing. I recognise that there's not really any way that I can vote against this based on the planning policy that we have. So for that reason, I will abstain.
Okay. Councillor Hampton first and then Councillor Lowick.
I was just going to come back to the commuted sum issue just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. As far as I was aware, that is a fairly equivalent payment, so it's going to feed into the viability in exactly the same way as the on-site provision, and we would probably rather have the on-site provision, but I think there's two separate issues. This explained why actually the providers weren't particularly keen to do the on-site provision for lots of sensible and sound reasons. So I think it's kind of equally disappointing in both senses that we can't have it on site or commuted, but I don't think it's necessarily, from my understanding, unless I'm wrong on that, a kind of separate issue. It would still impact the viability and cause the same issues we're discussing for the on-site provision.
Yeah, just to confirm, it's not a cheaper option for the applicant to actually provide an off-site contribution.
Councillor Lowick.
Yes, I think one of the other deciding factors in this is the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply, and that is being on every, well, apart from extensions, but every, report that we have and will have for some time. So, you know, that is a must. And so, you know, we do have to always have a mind for that, on that.
Yeah, I feel disappointed that the free social housing is gone, but it was delayed not by our fault and not by the builder's fault to start with. And by the time they wanted to start again, as they said, the prices have gone up, everything's gone up. Can't get Fordland or anyone, Orbit or anyone else to take over, which is 3 places in a block of 22. I mean, that costs money just to take over 3. And they might have nowhere else around here where they got staff or anything to turn up and look after it. So you're probably better off if there wasn't any in the first place. But I did vote for it in the first place, and I'm going to vote for it this time as well. So no one else wishes to speak. We'll move on to the recommendation, which is to approved. All those in favour? Oh, I need a seconder again. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. And the names will be called. Thank you.
So voting in favour is Councillor Driver, Councillor Hampton, Councillor Harper, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Laws, Councillor Lubbock, hang on 1 second, Councillor Smith and Councillor Young.
Anyone against? No abstentions? Thank you.
So abstentions are Councillors Sands and Councillor Knight.
Thank you. That's been approved. Thank you very much. Well, it's now hit 12 o'clock, and we did say we were going to take a break at 12. Everyone in agreement still to take a break, or do you want to go through? We've only got
this one left, right?
No, 2 more.
Recommended to be delayed.
Oh, but we're still got to go through the whole report.
We've still got to vote.
Don't we? So that take half a minute, that one.
I'd rather just go through.
Yeah, because I have another meeting at 12:30.
Yeah, I'll go back to work.
Okay, we'll go through it.
Sorry, guys.
No, rather powers the or the spend too much.
Fairness, I have thought that's where I am. She does know.
Okay.
I think she's happy about it. She does know.
The sooner that it's done, sooner.
Okay, we'll move on to the next planned application. There's 86 Drayton Road. And I'll ask this year to take us through the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is seeking planning permission to demolish all the existing structures on site and redevelop it to a new petrol filling station, which would include a forecourt, a sales building, a jet wash hub, EV charging base, car parkings and associated works. The site is located in on the south side of Drayton Road, or A1067, and is bordered on 2 sides, these 2 sides, by Aldi supermarket. And it sits right on the south with its car park to the east. And to the west side of the site is a range of commercial premises, including a car wash. And there are further mixed use over the footpath side. And towards the north, over on the other side of the Drayton Road, directly opposite to the site, there are residential properties intermixed with small scale commercial uses, including a car sales center here. So these are all residences, and that's a commercial one. Historically, the site was occupied by a petrol filling station, which is believed to have ceased operation approximately 25 years ago. Although the fuel pumps were removed long ago, the original canopy and the sales building have remained, and the site has been used as a car sales business for past 20 years. The site is located in a defined employment area as identified under policy DM16. It's also a former landfill site, and the south part of the site belongs to flood zone 2. So that's the view of the site from Drayton Road, and the road is towards the city. And That's the site, and this is another commercial car sales development. And that's the view of site when this was operating as a car sales. It's taken from Google Views from last year. And that's the image of the neighborhood from the site. As you can see, the residential buildings here, and this is another car sales building right opposite to the site. And coming to the proposal, this involves demolition of all the existing canopies and structures and a redevelopment of site to accommodate a new service station. This would include a petrol filling station over here with 3 island forecourt and a canopy over this. This could accommodate 6 vehicles simultaneously. A new sales building is proposed on the west side of the site. The service station would also feature 4 jet wash bays here and 2 car care bays here. And there is a parking for 10 vehicles, including 1 accessible parking over here. And there are 4 EV charging points here. And there are cycle parking over here and here. And motorcycle parking is proposed over here. That's the elevation of the proposed building. As you can see the canopies over here, and that's the jet wash base, and that's the sales building. DM16 related to the defined employment areas supports proposals that provide high quality employment and business development, provided they aligns with the overall sustainability objectives. Although both existing and proposed use may not be classified as high quality employment or business, the proposal would approximately provide 10 full-time employment and contribute positively to the local economy. While the replacement of car sales use with service station may not be directly reduce the reliance on private cars, it would provide essential servicing and maintenance facilities for the existing vehicles, including refueling station and a 4 EV charging station supporting the transition to electric vehicles. Regarding the design, the layout has been amended following the consultation with the highways. The building will also feature solar panels over the canopies and the retail unit. And overall, the proposed layout is reasonable and aligns with the character typically observed in employment areas. Concerns regarding potential noise from the jet washes, vehicle movements, car door slammings, and pump operations have been raised by the neighbor representations. The Environmental Protection Officer recommended additional noise surveys and additional noise impact assessment, and that conclude that subject to the recommended condition, the development is acceptable. A noise management plan will be secured through conditions. The jet wash operating hours will be limited from morning 8 to 7 p.m. on Monday to Saturdays and 10 to 4 p.m. on Sundays and other bank holidays. There are other 24/7 petrol filling stations operating near residential areas in the city as confirmed by the Environmental Protection. It is expected that nighttime traffic volumes at this site will be minimal. The subjected noise impact assessment have concluded that noise from vehicular movements and site operations is unlikely to cause any significant disturbance to the nearby residents. With the restriction of jet wash opening hours and implementation of a comprehensive noise management plan, the overall noise impact from the development will be effectively mitigated. Concerns about lighting have also been addressed. A lighting report demonstrates that majority of the site will have an average luminance of 50 with a maximum of 200 lux under the canopies. The light spillage into the highway is predicted to be less than 5 lux and effectively zero near the residential areas. To protect the wildlife, amber colored lights are recommended, and all lights will be motion activated to prevent unnecessary illumination. From a traffic perspective, visibility from site egress has been assessed and are satisfactory. give way markings and signage will ensure a safe and efficient vehicular movements. We have received a representation receiving concerns about the potential congestion and additional traffic on the existing road due to the proposed development. The existing and the proposed developments are both car-based operations, although they involve different types of business. However, we acknowledge that vehicular movements may increase compared to the previous car sales use. The site is within a defined employment area. Both former and proposed use are car-based, and road to which the site relates is a major city road. So this increase is not expected to have a significant impact on the surrounding area, which is confirmed by the highways. The site is also visible from the highway with sufficient space for vehicle queuing and during the busy periods, ensuring that minimal disruption of traffic flow. And demarcated pedestrian route is marked over here with the curbed access for the disabled as well to access the retail store here. Regarding the flood risk, the primary risk from fluvial flooding is considered negligible, and the development is acceptable subject to a surface water drainage strategy, which will be implemented in accordance with the environmental agency conditions. The site is also a brownfield location, previously used as a petrol filling station and associated services, and more recently as a car sales operation. A preliminary risk assessment and additional surveys have been submitted and reviewed by the environmental protection officers. And the site lies within a groundwater source protection zone, and the environmental agency has been consulted. Collectively, the advice from the environmental agency and the environmental protection indicates that the redevelopment is achievable subject to their recommended conditions. So the subject to the conditions set out in the report, we recommend approval for the planning permission.
Thank you very much for that. Questions, anyone? Jenny first.
Yeah, I was just hoping for a little bit more detail on the safety aspect of the roads, because it was either last week or the week before, 2 people were hit by a car on that road. So I just want to be certain that the considerations for pedestrian safety are in place.
The existing layout, it's very similar to that previous petrol filling station. So even though it was used as a car sales for past 20 years, they've maintained the layout for as used as a petrol filling station. So the existing entrance and the exit is already there. And in this case, we have got the guidance from the highway saying that this is acceptable. And coming to the pedestrian safety, from my site visit, there are 2 pedestrian crossings on both sides immediately to the site, adjacent to the sites. So I think it could be negotiated, I believe.
Harbour.
First of all, my apologies, Chair. I should have mentioned, not to, I don't think this is an interest to declare, but I think a number of us were contacted by objectors in the week preceding the committee meeting. I haven't looked at that material in any detail, but I just wanted to mention it. My question is around noise, actually, and I note that there's a condition on the jet wash operation. I wonder if there are any explicit conditions that we could place on the noise management plan, just about, asking patrons to be mindful of the sort of semi-residential nature of the area, and just trying to mitigate even the sort of noise that arises from ingress and egress, people using the.
Yeah, there will be a noise management plan as a condition, which includes training for the staff. If there is any noise, where to report, and for neighbor, the numbers will be shared with the neighbors in case of any issues, and they can report.
Could we ask explicit signage, to be displayed prominently on the site?
Yeah.
Pardon. Thank you, Chair. I've got three questions, if I may. First of all, what services beyond petrol sales and EV recharging are to be 24-hour? Secondly, with the car wash provision, is water used to be recycled or go straight into the drainage system? I know a car wash I've used from time to time actually recycles the water and filters it and reuses it. And thirdly, given there's a lot of residences sort of nearby and opposite, will the late night lighting and lighting in the small hours, midnight to say 5 AM, be dimmed so as not to disturb nearby dwellings?
Apart from the jet wash base, their services include the petrol filling station, EV charging, and the retail shop. All the other ones will be open 24 hours, and jet wash base will be controlled by the condition. Secondly, we have got advised from Environmental Protection and Environment Agency regarding the water management. So they have conditioned the use of water and how the drainage will be maintained. So they have asked for a detailed recommendations, and that will be followed for the drainage part of it. I'm not sure whether the water will be recycled or not. Yeah, the lighting is, from my understand from the specifications, that will be motion censored. So only when vehicle will be passing over the canopy, it probably will be lighting. So.
Councillor Young.
Lighting, it said that amber lighting is recommended.
Condition, yeah. Yes.
It is to be included within the condition, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
That was the intention.
Right.
Yes, again.
Yes, I want a little bit more clarification on pedestrians and cyclists coming onto the site and how their safety can be ensured. So sorry, again, it's been quite a quick reading of the report because I've had a lot to take in as last minute subbing, but it talks about ground markings. Ground markings can be ignored, or cars don't always follow as they're supposed to be. So I guess I just wanted a bit more reassurance about how it will be really clear that this is a cycle and a pedestrian path, such as zebra crossing patterns, or just a different colour can make a difference. So like a bright, like red line a red pathway, sorry, can make a difference, so that it's really clear this isn't just a road. This is actually a pedestrian access or a cycle access.
So with regards to cyclists, I'm just going to highlight where their cycle parking is on site. Is that the only one?
Yeah.
So the cyclists would enter the site and immediately park, and therefore they wouldn't be cycling around the site. In terms of pedestrians, the only services that pedestrians might access, assuming they don't need to fill up a can of petrol or something, the likelihood is that a pedestrian going to the site is going to be using the shop. And there is a zebra crossing just located here, which comes directly from the pavement. So they would be protected, and any cars exiting the site or whatever from using this entrance would see that.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Haynes?
It's a sort of similar question, just to confirm that all of the points from the designing out crime officer have been taken up. I think they have when I looked through it, but it's a lot of information. I just wanted to check that all of their points have been incorporated in the end.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's just so much of it.
I'm certain this has been addressed in the paper, but I may have missed it. Given that it was an existing service station, they're going to be underground tanks there already. Are these to be replaced? Because I would imagine after 25 years of non-use, they wouldn't be fit for purpose.
Yeah, environmental protection, they have been consulted on this, and that will be, I think the tanks are already replaced, or they have already managed it, and there will be new tanks proposed there.
Thank you. If no one else got any more questions, we'll move on to discussions and recommendations. Anyone? No, thank you. Well, I'll move the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We've got one item which I understand is going to be referred, so if we can do that quickly.
The next one is okay.
Orwell Road.
Yeah. 2 Orwell Road, and as one of the neighbors who objected to the development brought into our attention that they did not receive the committee notification email within that last week. So while checking our systems, it seems like we have not sent it. So since the objector would like to have a sufficient time to make arrangements for the meeting, our recommendation is to defer this to the next committee.
Okay. Anyone object to that? All those in favour to refer it? We need a second as well. Thank you. All those in favour? Defer.
Sorry,
Jenny, are you voting today or tomorrow? Thank you. I thought you would vote in favour, that's why I asked. That's unanimous as well, thank you.